Yeah, so welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good time looking at the exhibitions and some of the movies that were being screened. So we'll start with our second panel of the day. The panel 2 is titled Development or Disaster, Tourism, Urbanization and Infrastructure. The panelists are Mr. Niranjan Kapil from Urban Development Department, Government of Sikkim. We have Professor Shrawan Acharya from Jawaharlal Nehru University. We have Ms. Priyadarshinee Shrestha from Zero Waste Himalaya. And we have Mr. Dawa Sangpo from Yambong Ecotourism Committee and Sanctuary Asia Modern Boots Project. The discussant for the moderator, for this particular panel is Dr. Debolina Kundu from National Institute of Urban Affairs. And each panelist have been provided with a set of questions. First format is that each panelist will be answering and responding to that questions for 5 minutes each, which is followed by a discussion within the panelist, a group discussion, and then we will take it forward towards the audience. And let's be cognizant of the time, and let's get the panel started. Over to you, Professor Debolina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, all the organizers. Before I go directly to the issue of development or disaster tourism, urbanization and infrastructure, I would just like to take you through how the country is urbanizing. Many of you may not be aware. And also, who are we? We are the National Institute of Urban Affairs, a premier think tank with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. So we basically work in the policy space and also in programmatic interventions, programmatic assessments, and we are the think tank under our ministry. So when we look at urbanization, we do not have the data beyond 2011, we all are aware. What we know for certain is that the country, like any other country in the world, is urbanizing. The developed countries have already plateaued. We do have a young demography in the country, and the country is urbanizing, and the process of urbanization is inevitable. By and by, existing rural areas will transform into urban. That is one. We have again around 55,000 plus statutory towns and another 5,000 census towns. Census towns are those which are recognized by the Registrar General of India. Settlements, more than 5,000 population, with a density of at least 400 persons per square kilometer, and 75% of the male workers in non-farm activities. So if we look at the 2011 census, what we find is that for the first time, there has been an addition of 2,530 new census towns, which means these outgrown urban-like rural settlements have undergone in situ urbanization. They are where they are, gram panchayats, but have urban-like characteristics, and more than 75% of the male workers are in non-agriculture. And if you look at, we conducted some analysis of various states in the absence of census data, how are the states urbanizing? And what we find is that most of the states, all the states, they are urbanizing in this manner. A lot of growth happening in the transitional areas. So areas beyond the city limits, they are urbanizing at a very fast rate. And I think the hill cities are also experiencing similar characteristics, because within the municipal boundaries, because of the building bylaws, you do not allow many of the industries to come up. Many of the commercial activities, and industrial activities, they get located beyond the urban boundaries, the municipal boundaries, and again real estate activity is happening there. So I believe, and also what we heard from our earlier session on the waste management issue, I think that is also very important challenge which needs to be addressed in the transitional areas. Again, when we look at the budget announcement of cities as growth hubs, I think the importance of transitional areas is also coming up very sharply. And hill cities, they are impacted. Tourism does impact, and I believe tourism does bring in a lot of wealth for the cities. Along with that, the mess through real estate development in an unplanned manner, and the waste management which needs to happen but is not happening in a structured manner. I think these are the challenges that we come across, and I have been tasked to ask the panelists a set of questions. But before I go to that, I would also like to draw your attention to the Eastern Himalayas, which I do not think is very different from the Western Himalayas in terms of the development pressures. We have expanding roads, networks, hydropower projects, and growing towns, which are hailed as signs of modernization. Yet there we find accelerating deforestation, landslides, water shortages, and also the crisis of climate. It's all there, not only in the plains, but equally so in the Himalayan region. And tourism, as we know, it's marked as a driver of opportunity, but it also is straining the fragile ecosystem. And it's pushing the communities into precarious forms of work. The urbanization which is happening raises questions. Who benefits from the new infrastructure and expanding cities? And again, who bears the risk of overcrowding, inadequate planning, and collapsing ecosystems? This session will confront these contradictions head on. Is development in the Himalayas a pathway to prosperity or a slow-moving disaster in the making? Panelists will be discussing the trade-offs, the blind spots, and uncomfortable truths behind current development models. Without taking much more time, I would just go straight into the questions. And the questions are the same for all the panelists, as has been mentioned, and we have a set of 4 panelists who I'm not taking more time to discuss who they are. I think that has already been mentioned. And we are really honored to have this set of esteemed panelists with us who would be responding to my query, which is as such. Much of what we call development today, roads, dams, expanding towns, and tourism, is meant to bring growth to the Himalaya. Yet the social and ecological impacts are deeply uneven. From your perspective, do these projects represent a meaningful development? Who is this development really for? And why do we remain tied to a model that may no longer serve the region in the long term? And long term in case of when we look at the overall well-being. Are there any alternative ways of thinking of development? So Priyaji, if you could take the question.
Ladies first. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here and to be listening to all the wonderful discussion that has been happening since morning. So let me just kind of try and tackle. I've put my thoughts together on this notebook. I hope to be able to cover most of them. So I want to start with this question of does it or has these projects that we talk about, do they bring meaningful change? So if we look at it, it does bring change. There is no denying that certain projects do bring change. If we talk about, we were discussing roads in the morning, and roads, of course, can transform, an entire village in terms of their economy, in terms of access, everything then that comes with the building of that road. And of course, from a tourism perspective, road definitely is a key element. So there is no denying then that certain projects do bring meaningful change for people. And when we talk about roads, also, who are we then to deny that access? For people who really need that. But then the larger question again to ask is, where do we build those roads or projects? Why do we build? And more importantly, how do we build? It becomes then a key question. I then want to also reflect on the mountain thing that we discussed. Who decides, then what goes where? I think these become very critical questions. Where and how, I think for the mountains, because, ecological fragility, we've always kind of looked at the where and how. But now I think since we are living the climate crisis, it has become even more pertinent right now to answer these questions of where and how. So where, why and how? Because if you look at it, if a road which is not done properly, it can spell doom. We've seen that with our own eyes, and we've experienced that if it is not done properly. While it may bring, the required, the necessary prosperity, but it can also spell doom for people in terms of, if damaging groundwater recharge, recurring landslides, etc. And then if we talk about that same road cutting through a critical wildlife habitat, and if that habitat is of an endangered species, sometimes it might mean irreversible damage also. So answering these critical questions, I think, become very, very important. And because I think something that we again talked about in the morning is how natural capital actually is not endless, and that was a very important thing that we discussed. But of course, there are projects that are completely useless, which are not needed at all, which will benefit no one, but probably people who are constructing it, responsible for its construction, and maybe a little beyond. So those are, again, things to be discussed and debated, because we have seen also enough of those projects coming, which will benefit no one. So for example, if we click on it. I think we can discuss that as we move along. And then, of course, then there are sites which should also be no-goes. We cannot really build anywhere. That's also a given. And that is where I think researchers play such a key role then to decide, what could be these no-go areas, looking at a sociocultural perspective, from an ecological perspective, defining what could be these no-go zones, for development projects to come on. But of course, what we discussed just before this session, beyond the visible infrastructure, there is also these very invisible concepts that are very slowly creeping on us. Like one fine day, we realized that our mountains have become not just there, for tourists, they are not just mountains to come and enjoy the view, but to enjoy the view with Maggie, with a hot bowl of Maggie. So these invisible concepts in the name of development have also crept on us very slowly, and that change has happened very gradually. So paharo mein aana hai to Maggie khana hai. So and it's so embedded then into tourists who visit these places. So that brings us to the question then of who bears actually then, are these development then just for everyone? And who is this development for? Because the tourist comes, has their Maggie, goes back, but then, the long-term repercussions of that Maggie packets, which remain in our mountains for a long, long time, again, multi-layered, non-recyclable, So that is something then that is left to bear, and also the health impacts that come along with that, the pollution of our mountains. And also then if you look at infrastructure-wise, big five-star hotels that come into a neighborhood, and suddenly neighborhoods that never had water problems, suddenly, they're stressed for water because there's a big high-rise that has come, has a swimming pool even, catering to a completely different set of people. And suddenly the stress is then being borne by people in that neighborhood. Same for industries that again eat into the common resources like water, of communities who've forever dependent on those sources. And so in that sense, who is this development for then becomes a very key question, something that is not discussed very often, but really has to be, we need to discuss more and more of that. Also, I think homestay proliferation is another good example of, we have suddenly this mushrooming of homestays, but some people just also want to live their lives peacefully, right? And not be disturbed. So this whole social thing of how tourism then also has an impact on people who just want to go around with their lives, but now they have to deal with this, these tourists who have who come in. And so, yeah, I think I would just kind of like to rest with that for now and just throw in these things to kind of start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have highlighted the crucial challenges and how they are interlinked, how development and the booming disaster because of the solid waste management and liquid waste management issues that we are facing, and which is very, again, localized to the mountain setting, which the same solutions do not work for the mountains and the plains. With that, I would like to turn to Mr. Niranjan. Your views, sir, on what is being discussed?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Niranjan Kapil. I'm here to talk about urban planning, and I am very happy and honored to be a part of the shared future conclaves with all the esteemed panelists. Debolina ma'am and my mentor Dinkar sir is also here in the audience, which is a big boost for me. So the question is, much of what we call development today, road, dams, expanding towns, is meant for growing to Himalayas. Yet the social and ecological impacts are deeply uneven. From your perspective, do this project represent a meaningful development? So from my perspective, I'm not quoting anyone, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. So it's from my perspective, I would like to say, what is development? Development for everyone is different, from different age group, for different community development. What is development? Sometimes a basic infrastructure, providing water, electricity, and sewerage is a basic infrastructure. That is development. Sometimes a big development such as roads and creation of various spaces, public park, all these are development. So there are stages of development. There are stages of development which you would like to prefer and where you would like to start. Do we start at the basic or at the beginning or at the end? What is the development? We have to understand this. We also have to understand another topic that includes with this development is disaster. There are man-made disasters, there are natural disasters, and what there have been lately, the thinking of government and everyone is, there has been a behavioral shift from the perspective of risk management, risk assessment to be done for all the projects, safeguard to be done. Before projects for any DPR used to come, it used to only be how many estimations and how many cement or stones or anything is needed for any kind of project. But now there has been a behavioral change. A DPR is a much more complex document right now. It includes social component, it includes environmental safeguard components, it includes gender right now, and all these components are included in the project, and it is so difficult for a project it has to go through a lot of scrutiny, a lot of revision, because the center, Government of India, or multilateral agency, they are so particular about the importance of this social and environmental safeguards that we have to look at every aspects. And with my experience of working at many projects, it got me a lot of, I have been stressing on the importance of the ecological impact the project is going to create, and making people understand what is the importance of it and how it's going to affect not just the the public, but also the executing agency, the contractors. They also have to understand the importance of why it is being done. And then we know it is to be done. We all know there have been books and websites about all why is it important, but is it actually being implied? And if not implied, there has to be a monitoring mechanism. We are starting with the grievance redressal mechanism, and all these, we are now, it's shift to a proactive planning. Before it used to be a reactive planning. We design something, we experiment something, and then we work on it, we find the problems, and then we go to the solution. Now the planning field has jumped onto such a vast multidisciplinary subjects that we go proactive right now for various projects. And who is this development really for? The development is for the people, the welfare of the people, and for the community. There are various types of stakeholders involved. There are primary stakeholders who are directly involved with the project. There are secondary, there are tertiary, different levels of stakeholders. Sometimes the people executing are the stakeholders. Sometimes the people going to affect it after 10 years or after 15 years are the stakeholders. And why do we tie it to a model that may no longer serve the region? That is why we are not being stuck to the same model. Upgradation is going on, and behavioral change of thinking is going on. We have started off with the town planning cadre and recruitment of new planners. Now we'll create the GIS-based master plan for various towns, and these are the shifts of government which has taken to mobilize the planning unit, understand the planning issues, understand the urbanization issues, which was not assessed before. I'll say risk assessment, which is now done, and beforehand only, how it's to be done, what is to be done, what are the risk factors it comes with it, and the environmental impact assessment, the initial environment examination, all things are done right now for every project. And if it is not done, we are making sure that it is done. And the next question again I come into is the alternative ways of thinking of development. Now there's a shift of change of SETIA framework, which goes to a risk assessment planning, and for social equity assessment planning and environment ecological planning. So all these are being incorporated right now, and new models of framework are being practiced in various countries and being replicated, tried to be at least replicated here in the Himalayan region. I think that's all the questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I think you brought in front of the audience the challenges and also the solutions which is coming from the center through peer learning, and also the directives under the Swachh Bharat mission and the Amrut for GIS-based master planning, behavioral changes which needs to come in a big way. And one very important point that you highlighted is enforcement. We have large number of rules and regulations, but when you go to enforcement at the local level, there is minimal done. So I think that's the starting point when we look at sustainable urbanization, because there can be hundreds of rules and regulations, but if we as citizens do not comply to any of those, things won't happen in the proper order. So I would like to go to the next panelist. Before I go to Professor Shrawan Acharya, I would like to go to Mr. Dawa Sangpo, who is from the Ecotourism Committee and Sanctuary Asia Mud on Boots project. Your experience and expertise in the sector, and how do you think whatever has been already discussed, if you could add to it, and how do you see the future of the Eastern Himalayas in terms of tourism, and again its impact on urbanization and infrastructure, and vice versa? Both, I think they they have a bearing on each other. So how do you look at that?
Hello, I'm Dawa and I'm from Chongri village. So, I'm from tourism field, ecotourism. We have a group called YEC. So, we work for ecotourism and responsible tourism. I think I'll be sharing about my own experience about development and the disaster that development caused. So I belong from a very remote village in western part of Sikkim. So it's called Chongri. I think very few people know about my village. So I think it's been like 1 year. Like there has been road to my village. There was no connectivity or transportation, any means of connectivity to my place. So we had to walk. So it's just been 1 year. So we have a rough road type of. So I think for my village, I think that's the first development that we had. So that's kind of development, and that's what my villagers, everybody wanted, that my community wanted, that we wanted road. So that's what happened. It was during the maybe election time that eventually road came, and it's like I mean the villagers just wanted the road, just wanted road. They just demanded for the road, and so eventually the road came. But that road is constructed in that way that it's like doesn't have any. I mean it's like. No proper survey or nothing happened, just constructed that way, and there is road in the village. But this, I think it was in this monsoon time, there are around like multiple landslides in the villages, very like around 10 to 12 landslides, and I think still the roads are cut off, and we have to walk from halfway still. So I think for me, like development and disaster that's what, and also after once there was a road, lots of I think garbage started coming, not actually garbage, but what happened is like before the road, I think there was no Maggie or Huawei or whatever, Pepsi or Coca-Cola. There was no such thing in my village. So people were okay. They were maybe healthy. They didn't demand anything. But as soon as there was road, so these things started coming. Now in my village, you'll get everything. You'll get Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Kurkure, whatever you get. So, and after that, that started becoming a problem. That started becoming a disaster. So-called maybe disaster. So what happened? So we thought like we should start working on this thing. But I don't know, like we are now I think, say the question says who really suffers. I think the locals, the communities there, we are suffering now. And I think we are the one who demanded for the development, and now we are suffering for that. And I also feel that it's our responsibility now, we should tackle with that thing. So for that also we are working. I mean we have a group, so we are working on that, and like we can't blame, and we can't tell somebody that like you are doing this thing or whatever. So I feel like we should be the one to start doing from ourselves. So once we do ourselves, then maybe like if we do our on our own, like let's say like in my village we are doing, the group of youth, we are doing this, we are starting this thing. So maybe in all the respected areas, if you do this, then maybe we can come for this solution rather than blaming government or policies or thing. And also like I think for me development is like it's based on, I think, necessity and needs, whether it's necessary to build a road or whether it's it's a need, you know. Or like there should be proper plan. I mean, there should be proper plan. Like I think the system also, they have some problem in the system also. Like when the road was being constructed, there were no one to look after. Like villages, they didn't know, they just wanted the roads, you know. And like I think there should be some government officials or engineering says that like how it should be constructed and how it should go, so that it doesn't affect, you know. So now that thing has become a disaster. I think that's all.
So I'm coming to you at the end. It is no, it's by design. It did not happen at random. The reason being, you have so many years of experience in the urban sector, and you also, I believe, belong to this region, right?
Other side of the river.
So, how do you see this development and disaster and impacting urbanization, infrastructure development, as well as tourism? How do you synthesize the three, and what is the relationship you envision should happen and which is missing just now?
Thank you, Professor Debolina. In the morning, Avantika said a very interesting thing. You should listen to your grandfather or Aja Aji. Go back to them and listen to their story. Maybe I am the Aja of this panel. Please don't mind listening to my story. One of the advantages of being little old is you have an embedded experience of the transformations which goes through the place. And I come from a place called Pedong. You know, when I was studying in the school, small school called St. George's, that was the only school. It was on the Jelepla, Kalimpong route, a trade route. That was the only school. There was no electricity. Now you go to that place, and it tells you the story of urbanization. Now you go to the place, there is one college. There are seven schools besides my school. I call it my school because I have closely affinity with that school. But it still is a village. It's not designated as an urban. That tells you a story of the urbanization process that goes in not only in this part of the country, but all over India. So for me, I think development has a context, and I also try to bring, because this is about not only Sikkim, frankly, I don't know much about Sikkim. I also like to include the context of Darjeeling. Why do I bring the context of Darjeeling and Sikkim together? First of all, it belongs to one basin, the Tista Basin. And if you remember, whatever said and done, the old planning commission, did some fantastic work. If you look at their old document, Darjeeling and Sikkim, they have clubbed it as a one agroclimatic region. And there was a rationale behind it, because when a basin or when a region falls into one agroclimatic region, planning becomes much more easier. And many a times we hear climate change discourse and cities coming out with resilience plan, all that plan. It's okay. But climate change is a much bigger issue than a city. It is a global issue, but at most it could be a region or a basin-wise issue, because many of the disasters are linked to the basin. So this is one of the reasons I thought I would also try to contextualize Darjeeling and Sikkim, so that we can understand the problem together. I believe that development has a context. Think of Darjeeling and Sikkim. And why, if you understand this context, you will also understand why Darjeeling today, though it has a longer history of urban, because of the colonization and the colonial towns, tea gardens and coming up, and Sikkim, you will understand this. First of all, one of the most important contexts, of course, it is a basin. It is an eastern Himalayas, agroclimatically, geohydrologically, it's the same area. People more or less are same, but histories are different. And one very interesting and important aspect when you miss out in planning is the strategic location of this place. It is part of the borderland, and if you know, many of our development decisions, especially the infrastructure decisions, are based on strategic consideration. So if you're talking about the railways which is coming up, or the road widen, at least the narrative or the justification that is given is based on some of these reasons. So therefore, the strategic consideration plays a very important role. Of course, this area like Sikkim 37(1)(f), I suppose, and Darjeeling also have some restriction because many of the, including northeastern states, Himachal, all these places have some degree of protection for the community who belong to this area. And that is very important also to understand, because when we are talking about urban related issues, land becomes important. So land question is very, very important. And there are very interesting things which I have, to tell. Maybe I'll come up later. The other context that we need to understand is again very important for us. You see, what is happening is that urban development is a state subject. Please remember that. And Sikkim is a state. It is also part of the Northeastern Council, right? So therefore, Sikkim has much more independence in terms of taking decisions regarding urban transition processes, whereas Darjeeling is not. Darjeeling, though it has a larger urban percentage in terms of, Sikkim is only around 20%, maybe now it has become little more, I may be corrected. Darjeeling is higher than that. But because of this, factor, Sikkim certainly gets more grant, certainly gets more, it has more leverage with the central government, whereas Darjeeling doesn't have. And the other context which is important for Darjeeling, because since I am from that area, which I have seen, is because over a period of time, because of whatever political movements that is happening, the urban areas are really suffering. There is no particular aspect we are able to take care. That is one. And the last and the most important context, not only for Sikkim and Darjeeling, but also for the Northeast and Ladakh, all is, please remember one thing. Today we are a liberalized, market-oriented economy. And we are trying to integrate economically different regions of this country. And one of the most important impact that is going to happen is related to land and the real estate question. Capital flows, it may come in a different infrastructural mode, it may come in a different investment mode, because every state in a neoliberal context is competing with the other state, even amongst the Himalayan state, who will draw more, capital into the state. And if more capital comes, you will have to give concessions to the capital. And if you can't give concession to the capital, then certainly nobody will come. And I don't have to elaborate the story. All of you may be aware of this. So this is the context we need to understand if we need to understand the Darjeeling Sikkim story about urbanization, all these things. The second question, Madam, because you are in the position, you may also like to highlight. I have a fundamental problem with the basic definition of urban. The reason is, because Darjeeling, Sikkim area, the hilly areas, I think of Darjeeling and Sikkim, sometimes I feel we are very urban. We are a very urban society, right? Should there be any other definition that we need to have for the hill areas, for planning and other purposes? Why I am telling you this is for simple reason. Ma'am talked about census town. I think in Sikkim only Rinag is a census town, if I am correct. But I feel there are many other areas in Sikkim which are urban now. But it is being managed under the rural, panchayati system. So there is a disconnect between, the way urban is, the area is growing and the way you are managing. So I would like to think that, this idea and definition about urban, especially in a vulnerable or, hilly states like India, we need to have some degree of, maybe we need to redefine and reconceptualize and rethink in the context of planning and other decision making. I think that's otherwise we are trying to generalize, say for instance, Sikkim with Kerala, Gujarat, how does it make sense? And if urban development is a state subject, I would think this redefinition would make a lot of sense in our planning intervention decisions. So this is one aspect which I would like to highlight. Maybe I'll little bit, talk about some other issues. In the morning, there was a lot of talk about disasters, and most of the time, the focus was on disasters which are physical in nature. But when you talk about urbanization, please remember, disasters can also come in the form of social conflict and contestations. We are aware of that. Sikkim, I'm sure we are aware of that. Darjeeling is aware of that. And think about, what I'm talking about. Think about urbanization induces increase in, workforce, right? But think about Sikkim, which is already having declining fertility rate. Your workforce is going to decline in future. Already all of us, both in Darjeeling and Sikkim, we depend a lot on the migrant workers. Think about the construction, who builds house at least I'm not aware much of Sikkim, but Darjeeling, in a remote village like Pedong, every house is constructed by people who come from outside. And as urbanization induces, because of the railways coming in, the roadways coming in, more integration with the market, okay? And if you are not, the urbanization in this part of the world, if it's not able to generate employment which can, we can either employ the people, and also it has more demand for the migrant workers because the local workers are not working in these sectors, there is going to be a people coming from outside. Now the problem is, how do you resolve the question of insiders and the outsiders? Are we willing to deal with this question? It's a difficult question, but it is a real question. These are the questions which brings in a lot of contestations and which needs to be addressed, right? And one last point, though there are other points which I have, I wanted to tell something different so that the discussion, I have seen, this rural, tourism. Now today, tourism in Darjeeling and also Sikkim is not urban-centric, small town like Kalimpong, Darjeeling, Nasihat. It has moved into the rural areas. All the problems are fine. There are waste disposal problems and all. But one of the most interesting thing which I am seeing, at least from the Darjeeling experience, there's tremendous degree of, indirect alienation of land happening. The rule may say that I don't have to sell the land, but you can lease out you build the house and lease out the property to somebody else. What is it? It is an indirect form of land alienation, right? That is one question which is, happening and which is going to be a very important question in Darjeeling area. But one of the very interesting questions which, related to this process of urban, because tourism is directly impacting the urbanization process, because tourism is a sector which is tertiary and service oriented, therefore it is important. One of the questions which I often, see in our place happening is, and I wonder, who are the people? We have different stratas of our society, right? Who owns most of the farmhouses or the homestays? Do the marginal communities like the SCs, do they have this? Are they getting benefit of the homestay which the government of West Bengal or somebody else promoting? Who is benefiting in the process? Similar is the question in terms of the urban areas. I think we don't have the data, but I saw a very interesting report in that the file which was given, there was livelihood. Today, I think the problem is also the data, because we don't know much data about who is benefiting in terms of employment and other type of thing. So my question is there some degree of social segregation and inequalities emerging and happening, or will it accentuate in the future? And what happens with respect to the conflict which is going to happen because of this nature of urbanization and development that takes in Sikkim and Darjeeling? So these are some of my initial concerns, so we can have it later. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you brought to the fore very important and pertinent issues. I think first is the definition of urban. I think it's high time we revisit, and it is not a direction that has to come from the center, because as you mentioned very correctly, that urbanization is a state subject. So every state defines their statutory towns in a manner they wish. So the Seven Sisters, including Sikkim, it's 8, and the northern part of West Bengal, that also need to take into cognizance when we are looking at the Darjeeling Himalayas. So I think it's high time that we revisit. And again, one factor that could be included while the state governments revisit the definition of urban is taking into consideration the built-up areas. And then we can also, if we use the Digurban method of delineating urban, then we could also compare and contrast with the global, the other countries of the world. So that could be facilitated if we look at urbanization, taking into account the built-up areas, and also the sparsely populated urbanizing areas which are not 100% urban, but could be urban in the next 10 or 20 years. That is one. And you talked about the census towns, and rather you referred to what I said. But again, census towns are rural by governance, although they have urban-like characteristics, but the state administration does not consider them as urban. It is for the first time last year in the SASCI reforms that peri-urban areas was taken up as the first set of reforms. Again, for PM Swanidhi, which has come up with a new set of rules, directions, there again peri-urban has come. So by and by, I think the consciousness of the ministry at the central level is also, the consciousness is increasing, and there's a lot of discussion on this transitional areas. Government of India formed 5 working groups last year, and one was dedicated to the concerns of this peri-urban areas, which are, as you mentioned again, I think real estate development is coming in a very big way, in whichever state you look at. So what are the concerns? How do we address both the environmental part and the population increase? Because the point which you made about decline in population, I think it's the migration. Again, that's seasonal. When there's construction activity, people come from other states, work in the hill states, and go back. I don't think they bring their families. They come as construction workers, work and go back. So again, this concept of insiders and outsiders, which again is leading to some social sort of social, which is disrupting the social well-being. So that is another concern. I think if there are students here from various universities, these are the research questions that they need to address. Some primary research needs to happen, looking at the social aspects of well-being. How is tourism impacting? What are the concerns of the villagers? Because let us not look at rural and urban binary. Let us look at the region as a whole and see how is tourism impacting the villagers who had a piece of land today because of tourism. I think many of those have been converted into hotel-like features, although we are calling them in the different names. However, what is the impact? I think some impact assessment, and then what is the strategy to really save the land from such development? I think that needs to be addressed. Away from the homestays, I think it's there everywhere, not only in rural, urban, but also in rural areas. And before I open the floor for discussion, any questions, I would like to go to your intervention where you did mention about the road leading to a lot of disruption in terms of the waste that is being generated and the ill effects of urbanization. So how do you envision that? I think road is also important when you look at development. If somebody in your family is unwell and you would like to take that person to the hospital, I think connectivity is important. Without a road, you cannot reach the hospital on time. So how would you convert the disaster into a dividend? What is the key thing that you think is most important?
I think I mean development is very important. Like we need development because like when we were in school, we used to walk from the village for 4 to 5 hours, and we used to go to school. So we need road that I like. Not only me, everybody needs development. We also want network. We don't have network in our place, so we want tower also. So we want development. That's what we want, development. But the thing is, like, there should be a proper plan. There should be a proper plan. And like, what I mean is, like, we need road, but we need road. I mean, like, what happened is, like, what they do is, like, when they are constructing road, like, it should be like, minimal destruction. There should be minimal destruction. There should be some proper system to construct a road, because there are lots of engineering sales and all department has that. So that is a rural area. I mean, that's a village area and a remote area. That doesn't mean that there are no people who speaks about that. So that doesn't mean that just make like construct however you like. That's what my point is. Like, it should be constructed in a proper manner, in a good system, that even there's a development and also there's a less destruction. And also, like, that's what I said. What is necessity and what is need. Necessity, like whatever we like, how much we want. That's what development should be. I mean, it should not go beyond that. Like, there should be some system for that.
Yeah, that I understand. But my question is, whom should you nudge? Who is the stakeholder whom you need to address this concern? Who is the person or group of people who needs to be sensitized on this? I've almost given you the answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's the department, it's the system. I mean, it's the department. Whoever is constructing the road, like whichever department is doing that. So there should be also. It should be from the village also. It should be the community also. But there are some places like community. They just want road. They doesn't care about. I mean, they don't know about the destruction. After that, they regret that, oh, this should not be done. We regret it later, but they didn't knew. So it should be the responsible of that person who knew this thing, who knew about this the ways to construct a road or way to construct any infrastructure. So I feel that it should be not blaming that way, but it should be a system, proper system. Because before constructing, I mean, before doing it, there should be a proper plan. I mean, when it's constructing, at that time also, I think they should pay a visit and check whether it's going in the right direction or not. What happens is, once it's constructed, and at last they come take some photos and go and burn. So that's what happening.
Yeah,
So
I get you. So I think it's both ways. The agencies who are responsible for construction, I think that should happen in a planned and sustainable manner, and also the people who are benefiting from the various infrastructures that are being created, they also need to be mindful of the way they use, and also the way of sustainable usage of infrastructure. I think both ways it's very important. So and the community needs to be involved. They need to be the direct stakeholders and engaged in the process of development. So we think if we have a lot of tiles and lot of concretization, that is development. But actually that is not allowing the rainfall to seep in, right? Your groundwater is again not being recharged. So the community needs to be educated on nature-based solutions, how more of green cover needs to come, and that discussion needs to happen with the various stakeholders who are concerned with the development of the region. It cannot be top down. It needs to be both ways, bottom up and top down, and they need to come to an understanding that this is the best for the community. Again, footpaths is very important because in most of the cities, and I think it's for the hill cities also, I did find some footpaths while I was coming today from Siliguri to Gangtok. But there is a footpath which is paved, which has a grill attached to it, but all of a sudden you find it ends nowhere, right? So an old person, while he or she is walking up the footpath, comes to an area where there are several cars and buses, but that person cannot navigate anymore. So I think those concerns are also very important while town planning is happening. And with that, I would like to again redirect the question to Mr. Kapil. So what are your concerns when you look at town planning in the various, not only in Gangtok, but in the other small towns of your state? And also we came up with the question of redefining or relooking at the definition of small towns or towns as a whole. Is there any thought on this? And when you are looking at town planning, what are the issues that you are currently addressing or you envision to address?
Thank you, ma'am. When it comes to road, there has been a precedence right from an early age that wherever road goes, development happens. And Gangtok 2 is a linear development road, where development has occurred. Along the NH or along the road, development happens. That's the idea of it, that's the concern which the first thing you see is road is happening, so vikas on this, development is happening. So that's the conception. And compared to other countries and all, they first plan, and they plan a town, or they first install the services and amenities, and then they plan the road. Here what happens is first the road comes and the land value increases, and it gets the shift from rural to urban slowly changes, the land use changes, the pattern changes, the behavioral changes, and with it comes a lot of waste generation also. But there is a transition of every rural town which goes to urban town, and there is a rate of urbanization that happens, and there are types of urbanization that happens. A city or a town has its own identity, its own characteristics. It grows and evolves in its own way. We can only direct it, we can only mold it for a better tomorrow. And when we plan roads, or when we plan, we also need to look after the disaster element, because we cannot avert a disaster, but we can make a resilient planning on it. We can make a resilient document to manage it. We also, when we see roads, we also have to see the drainage part also, the water flow movement. We have to understand, there's a 1-year study actually to see the lean period and the maximum period of water flow in that village, where the water is going on, and we have to create a drainage also along the road, which streamlines because nature finds its own way. The water will find its way to reach to the river or the stream, the rainfall. So that is why we have to plan accordingly in adaptive nature with the basic village thinking also. And there have been a lot of there are a lot of demands coming up for various roads at this place, and it's public who tells that the road is needed here and this road is there and needed here. And so we face a lot of challenges when constructing the road also. And when we plan for the road also, this is very important for everyone to know. Suppose A to B is planned. We need road from this A to B, okay? Now there are several ways to getting it. I can go through this row also, I can go through this row also, or I can go through this row. I have to reach that point. So there are a lot of, communities get involved, and it brings a lot of characteristic to the road, and it brings a lot of challenges to the road. Where are we? First, we have to see the natural terrain and topographical constraint issue. Land is a very scarce identity, utensils in Himalaya region. We cannot afford to lose anywhere land. The discontinuation of footpath along the NH is because of the land issue, because 2 vehicle has to enter, compared to other areas, the 2 vehicle has to cross by, and there's a very less space for pedestrianization. But we have done at many locations. We've thrown a cantilever, and we've given a preference to the pedestrian movement. We've created foot over bridges, specializing, focusing on the pedestrian movement. And since it's a walking city, Darjeeling and Gangtok is a walkable city, and we want to create that identity along with it. So when we plan for the roads, we only see the land value going up, and as soon as the person who demands it for the road, as soon as the road comes in, the business comes up, the hotel, the homestay, the amenities, the services, which is a good thing. So Gangtok has been facing a lopsided development. When we see all the other towns, a lot of lopsided development, high urbanization rate, very high urbanization rate at the east side of the Sikkim, and all the populations are migrating rural to urban, all search of jobs or opportunity or educational facility or anything. They are all migrating. So what our urban vision states of is decentralizing. We're decentralizing all this conceptual towns, and we have government of Sikkim has 2 districts they have formulated, Soring and Pakyong. There was only 4 districts. We have created 6 districts, and now these towns will be. Before it was a rural town, now it will be a shift to urban town. Okay, and when it shift to not only spatially, not only physically, not only in mapping, but the behavioral change also needs to be there. And we are understanding that why population, we cannot compare population to other towns or other villages of mainstream India, but we have to see that when we ask for funding or when a government project comes up, the most important thing is population. As population, you are investing this much money for very less people. As we go outside Gangtok, very less people. Why? So this question always comes in. Why are you investing so much? Because the answer is solution. We have a very, project may be small. Area of, construction is very small, but impact is very high. This is not felt in any other places. The impact of a small footpath, impact a small park is created at a neighborhood level, at a terrain difficult city. The impact it generates is very high, and it's very high compared to other towns. Person to impact issue, if you calculate, it is very high, and that's what makes us motivate us. Now we are doing for the apart from Gangtok, we are doing for Soring, Gazing, Mangan, Pakyong, Singtam, Rampu. So all these upcoming towns, we want to plan and streamline now only. Before right now Gangtok, we can do a minimal planning, more management. But when we go to these small towns, we want to plan beforehand. We want to create a master plan for it. We want to create a GIS-based master plan. We want to integrate with the National Land Modernization Program. And then we want to digitize it. And we want to streamline and plan for the next, maybe first, we have 3 types of planning, short, mid, and long. We want to plan all the 3 types of planning in these various towns, which are some are very less population, but now since these towns will have urban local bodies, it will have a shift of change from panchayat to panchayat area to it will go to now Nagar Panchayat. It becomes an urban area. So they are skeptical about delineation of the boundary also. Like will we get development once we go to the urban area? Will we get what kind of development? So there are people asking for it. What kind of development happens if this is the delineation and I come to the urban area and I'm left out of it, what my neighbors get and what I don't get. So this has to be explained very carefully, sensitized. This is the importance of urban planning, and this is the what sir told about terminology for different for Himalaya region, and what center has also done is understanding. They have created, before it was there in UDPFI guidelines, for hilly areas and mountain areas. Now there are projects coming up, especially for mountain areas, and which Jammu Kashmir also, we have to compete. Sikkim has to compete with all the northeast along with Jammu Kashmir and Uttaranchal, Uttarakhand. So all these we have to compete, and it's a challenge-based fund, and we like to present projects and compete with the mountainous regions. We don't have to compete with Kerala or Mumbai or where demographic, socio-economic profile doesn't match. So this is how thought is being provoked all the other towns, and the planning is going on.
Thank you. Thank you for taking us through the journey of your state government and how you are envisioning planned development and also conversion of rural to urban in a more planned and sustainable manner. We have some time to take a few questions from the audience. I would now request anyone who would like to pose a question, please identify yourself and also the panelists to whom you are addressing the question.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Professor Debolina, I'll take
Yeah.
it forward from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, if anyone has some questions, we can just raise hands and the volunteers will come towards you with the questions. Thank you.
To Kapil sir, actually. So I'm a little new to the region, so I just wanted to know, before implementing any project, does the government do an environmental impact assessment? And second, why doesn't the government include natural buildings as part of the building bylaws? Like, since it's less carbon intensive and 40% of the carbon emissions come from the construction sector. So that's why.
So sorry, I did not get his name. Sorry.
What was your name, if you may just?
Atharva.
Hi, Atharva. So your first question, the first part of the question was whether we do environment impact assessment or not. So there are projects of various categories. They call category A, B, C, and D. And as per my knowledge and as per the project that is under me, I can speak only on behalf of that. And I say that we categorize the projects accordingly, A, B, C, and D. We do an initial environment examination. Okay, we do a basic environment examination. There's a detailed, almost every project has. We have this 200 pages document of detailed environment. Even I did not know about it. So much detail. When I met the environment expert, and these all are data to be collected. These are things to be done. And I was astounded and I was happy also that these studies are being done pre-project, and which make me understand. Suppose if project comes under category A, suppose there is some erosion going on or tree cutting or anything of that sort of environmental compliances. So we make sure that it falls under category, and there are a list of things to be done for that. And the environment impact assessment it will be done for that project. And now for the projects which we are coming up, we are constructing transit hub community complexes at various towns and all. So we are using the green cement for that. And we under EDB guidelines and under World Multilateral Funding and all. So we're using the green building, green cement, for sustainability. And also our bylaws are formulated in a long period of time. And it has its own characteristic because of the terrain, because of the constraint, most importantly constraint. Gangtok cannot develop at any side. Why? Not because of the land value, but because of the physical constraint. We have the defense land, we have the physical terrain where development cannot happen. So our bylaws are formed accordingly as per the terrain and area specific. So that is why it has been much productive and much more, ease of reference to do. Thank you.
Yeah. We have any more questions? Yeah. You could take one from the middle row. And try to keep your questions brief and to the point, please. And follow-ups can happen later in the tea breaks.
Hi, my name is Avilash. It's been quite insightful to listen to your discussion. My question is not targeted towards any panelists, so anyone can answer. When we talk about development, right, we often only link it to construction of roads, dams, buildings, and industries. But development at its core is just not about that as well. It's about improving quality of life while respecting people, culture, and environment. And my question is, keeping this in mind, if you have to think of redesigning development for the Himalayas from ground up, where should we start from is what I wanted to know. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
I think the centrality of development debate is actually about people. The only problem is the way we are perspective about what approach do we follow in terms of developing whatever we may call, right? See, you know about the Human Development Index, and Sikkim does quite well. Of course, Himachal is one of the best states besides Kerala because I think one of the fundamental thing is, in any development discourses like Kapilji also said that, how they, select the projects. I think in many of the projects, somehow the people are missing. You see, what I mean to say is that, of course, Bai said very nicely that people wanted road. Okay, so they built it, but they suffered later. So it's in a way, nice way of realizing one's mistake and learning by mistake. But by that time, it is too late. What I think that what the question that you are asking is, how do we align the needs for project based on people's requirement? There are some projects like defense, I think that we cannot do anything. But that is where I think the whole concept of decentralized planning comes in. I'll just give you example from urban. You see, I am still a vouch, advocate for that. In 73, 74, the government of India brought out a very interesting act called the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. The 74th was implemented in rural areas, and it did really empower the panchayats and the people. But somehow, the institutional and constitutional mandate of implementing the 74th Amendment Act has not been followed through and through by many states. I think even in Sikkim, you have the municipal corporation of Gangtok, but the town planning department is different. Now, I don't know if I have to understand, because when the GNNURM was being, was implemented, having a statutory elected body was compulsory requirement for most of the municipality to access central funding and all that. The logic of that was then the people's representative can decide what people want. But somehow that has not been happening. So my question to you is, answer to your question is that I think unless people can articulate and their voices are internalized in the development process, I think there will always be an alienation of the people and the project. Some project, as I said, which are strategic, maybe you can't do anything, but some of the urban development projects and all, you can certainly do to some extent. If I can little bit add, my little bit of experience with the Himalayan states across India, I found Sikkim relatively does much better. And I'm using the word relative compared to the other states. And, like even Himachal and other places which are much older. I think, like one small example, one of the most interesting thing in Gangtok, and he also alluded, you can walk and walk through. In fact, I have, realized when I walked through, like just next to the town planning department and the hospital was there, the overbridge has created amazing space. It is a very small space, but it becomes a very small public space. I saw a lot of people not only walking, but sitting around talking. I think these are some of the spaces in which I think, this is my personal observation as an urban planner. I find this a major, compared to other cities, as I said, much more interesting and which is very rooted to the people, communities, But there are also problems because many of such spaces, like if you see the MG Road as a public space, sometimes you also wonder, does that public space, is for the local people or is it only for the tourists who come to enjoy some few days? To what extent that MG Road gets embedded in the public life of normal Gangtok citizens? I think this is what I think I can only tell based on some of these examples. Right? Thank you.
Just to add to sir, just to add to the same point of sir, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about development, and also you were trying to relate it with the soft components also with the people with it. What we do is after creating an asset, building a structure and all, or anything of sort, we see the socio-economic characters, we add the soft components to it. Soft component as in the quality of life and all that, and that all is measured right now with the outcome of social development goals. Sustainable development goals, 17 goals we have. We are prioritizing all the projects as per the SDG goals. We are prioritizing which goal we are achieving, what are the assets we've created, how much anticipatory beneficiary we have affected, and what kind of, like, suppose if it's a street light, how many street lights, and the area it covered. So all these are being now quantified, quantified in terms of sustainable development goals. And the area which sir told small space, and it was our team's idea to to construct that, and thank you so much for recognizing it.
Okay, the next question let's take it from the middle section here. Yes, I just wanted to make a question. You spoke about that you do an EIA for the projects. Mr. Kapil? Sorry. My name is Usha. So you said that we do an EIA, but for the mega projects that are happening, for example, in and around Gangtok, which I think Sir just alluded to, a small part of Gangtok, which is a very small part of the town, very, very small part. But I wanted to ask if there was any public hearing before opening up space for large projects, which they suddenly come upon the public when you find that there is, barricaded area where you cannot go, and suddenly large infrastructures coming up. I think I'm referring to that PM, what is that? The mall that is coming up opposite the Manan Kendra. So that kind of area, do you do public hearings? Is the public taken into confidence when the government plans these things? And secondly, when you're talking about development, there are, I think, many angles to it. But this was one question I wanted to ask. The public doesn't seem to know about it, and suddenly it's like a surprise, and nobody is able to say anything about it because it's already decided, already planned. And the second question was, you said about competition. So the whole of Himalayas, we are the youngest mountain in the world, the most fragile, everything. But why do we need to compete with J&K or Himachal when Eastern Himalayas is a totally different entity from Western Himalayas?
I'll answer the second part first. These are all challenge-based funds that we, if we compete with, there's a certain percentage of funding we get from the Ministry of Government of India, and they have kept their themes and they have kept their, area and population. So we have to compete with the same population which we have, or the same type of terrain. So it's divided into two parts. One is mountainous terrain, one is plain terrain. So that competition, I'm talking about the competition challenge-based fund, which has been, Government of India has been organizing from a long time. So there we compete, and with the other Himalaya states. So we don't have to compete with the Kerala, or there's a separate slot allotted for Northeast and Himalaya state. That is what. And the first part of your question, ma'am, not aware of the mall, Ekta Mall, but whichever projects which we've done, I'll talk about Lal Bazar also, the redevelopment and retrofitting of Lal Bazar, the biggest market area in Sikkim. We did a detailed participatory planning process, and wherever the projects I am associated with, I make sure that this is important. I put emphasis that the participatory planning is important. There are different types of stakeholders, I told. Primary stakeholders are the one who are the shopkeepers, the association, trade union, trade association, the market association, the parking association. So we have called them and we've spoken with them. There was a second stakeholder we called was the police, traffic police, and for management and other department also. So as much aware of what projects their participatory planning has been done at some point, and we want to to advertise it to coming up. There's a lot of steps involved in it when a project comes to from 0 to 100, because when we are working for projects, we are working for many simultaneous projects along the way, and some get shelved, some doesn't get funding, some doesn't get the requirements doesn't fulfill, or so there are so many criteria, and out of the finalized which have done, and it has been planned for a long time. So there is a duration on that project also. We only see the implementation part. There's a planning process also involved, and management process involved, which takes almost around for major project 3 to 4 years. And unless it's a directive, and unless there's a timeline set by Government of India, there is a lot of time that takes place in the process, and we ourselves doesn't know whether it's go or not. And some, when it reaches almost okay, it's about to be done and all that time, we are aware that we make it public, and public informing of today I got an idea that so many researchers are here. One of my sisters is also here, researcher, and their when she talked about her data, and then I was astounded that, with this data, so much help we could have got from the other project to substantiate it, to prove someone that this project is needed. And she showed me data of, I was also, shocked that you have this much data. With this data, we can actually generate a need for the project, and that is the most crucial part of the project. And if there is any researcher and all which have, there's a lot of opportunity to work, coexist with the developing agency, that, your projects, your data somewhere or the other substantiate our projects to make it so that there's a cohesion. I was thinking of it also.
Yeah. On that note, I think people should listen to researchers, including the government and the policymakers as well. Do we have next question? Yes, let's take one from this row, please. Yeah, in the back. Could you, yeah.
My question for Dr. Kundu and Shrawan. I've been an architect here for a couple of decades, and I feel that cities like Darjeeling and Gangtok, mountain cities, not even hill cities, not even cities like Shillong or Kohima, so these are very steep terrain. And I feel that there aren't the planners that I have interacted with now, so they don't have the expertise, nor do planning schools have any planning paradigms to kind of handle mountain cities like Darjeeling. And we keep, Gangtok has about half a dozen plans, structural plans, development plans, all the way every 5 years there's a new plan, but nothing has changed on the ground. So my feeling is that actually because we don't know how to plan a city like this, and these planners come, they train on a different terrain. They come here, they have a window 2 years, they go to finish something. By the time they get their head around the context, the time is up, they put on something and then they go back, so, and they're not kind of accountable to anybody, and then so it just keeps happening all the time. So my question is that, I mean, not only in India, I feel like the world over, we don't really have strongly developed planning paradigms of planning imagination for mountain cities. So, so I wanted to hear what you guys had said about that. Another question about Niranjan was talking about we had bylaws. You said that we have bylaws. I'd like to put it in the past tense. We had, come to think of it, we had nice bylaws, based on geology. But then West Point happened, and then this housing colony happened over there. And the same over here, okay, West Point, they said that it's steel and it's light and we can build high. And the government defended it tooth and nail. And like Usha was saying, we didn't know what happened. Suddenly it came up, and we didn't have any public didn't have any place to go and put up our complaints. And for me, that's valuable land in the middle of town. What should it be used for? Do we need another boutique hotel and another mall? So when you say that you do a lot of public consultation, I'd like to kind of see it actually in action. So. Yeah, so what happened to the bylaws? So we had really good bylaws, and just by setting up these precedents, we destroyed those bylaws. And people in Sikkim are not going to kind of listen and say that, okay, these guys can make and we can't make, so what? So now, it's, I think it's out of control, I feel so, yeah,
Okay.
that much.
So we have two questions, yeah, for Professor Shrawan and Debolina.
I think, thank you very much, Kailash, for this question. I think it is not that there is no plan or design or engineering, requirements for hill towns or planning and all that. There is. There are, your DCR and bylaws are supposed to be based on the physical characteristics of that area. In the morning, somebody from the geology department, education department, he told that, in fact, Sikkim has all the geohazard zoning. Geohazard is basically that is what fits into the building construction processes, because that is what will tell you whether the soil can hold on to this particular, load and all that. So I think, in fact, what is interesting also, let me also tell you something very interesting. Of course, this is also a question to, In fact, Gangtok, I found a very interesting document on Gangtok prepared by ICLEI and the Municipal Corporation of Gangtok, which is actually the landscape mapping based on what type of land, biodiversity. It was based on the Biodiversity Act of 2002 or 3. And it was amazing. Gangtok has prepared a plan, ICLEI, an organization based on Delhi, they have prepared it. My only question is, the question which Kailash is asking, whether we take these studies which has already been done into the planning process or not. I think it is not the question of there is no possibility, there is no technical, possibility of doing a study. The question is, do we integrate this information when we plan the cities, right? Of course, I find it very interesting. Yesterday, I went to the mall, right, the biggest mall, because when I came last, it was still under construction. So that was one of the attractions for me. But I was also wondering, when I went and saw the footfalls, in the mall, there were very few people. Then I was wondering, if this is the number of footfall, what business sense does it make to have such a building, even otherwise? So what I'm trying to say is that to the question that you asked, there are n number of possibilities of integrating the studies. I think the problem is just like in urban planning, there are problem of multiplicity of institution and not coordinating it. I think this is also a problem. The other thing you also asked was about, consultancies. That I fully agree. That is where it is very important for us to build local capacities. I think local capacities, I don't mean only the government, but also the civil society institutions, the NGOs, architects. I think if one of the reasons, I can share one example. When the GNN, because CEPT was a nodal agency in 2006-07 when the GNNARM program was initiated. And CEPT was given the capacity building program. And one of the things which we realized, most of the plans in Northeast was prepared by consultants who were not from the Northeast. And there is fundamental problem, I agree. But when you ask the government of India, they say there are no capacity in that. And that is why they started running capacity building program by the government of India. But capacity just by training 20 people in 30 days doesn't build capacity. Development is a very emotive issue, emotion, a passionate issue attached to the place that you are from. So if a consultant goes from Bombay, what attachment does he have a place? But if a consultant from Gangtok does it, I'm sure it is going to be a different plan. So I fully agree on that, but that, I think that's why the citizenship matters. I think if citizens can come together in civil society and forums like this, I think that's what the relevance of this type of group. If you can come together and be a pressure group and also bring capacity, certainly these things could be addressed. I'm sure about that.
Yeah, and to add to what you have already explained, I don't want to reiterate what you have said. I think very pertinent. I think government of Sikkim is going in that direction. The localites from here have gone to various parts of the country in the planning schools, and now again coming back to the state government and filling in the municipal cadre positions as town planners. I think this needs to be incentivized, and there needs to be more of local energy, local positive energy towards building the city in a more sustainable manner through people who are from the region, not from people from Mumbai or Delhi coming and giving you lectures about a region about which they have very little idea. I think that local knowledge and the attachment to the soil is very important while you're framing your policies and also constructing projects for your region. That needs to come at first. And we at NIUA, we have the Hill Cities Forum. I think that is also a very good platform for peer-to-peer learning, and that the state of Sikkim should also, and the Darjeeling Himalayas cities need to take the maximum out of it. We have partners, but I think there's a lot of learning can happen through that network.
Can I just quickly add? Sorry, finally I got the mic. So I just wanted to kind of add to what sir you said about having local people doing it. But a lot of time, I think it also goes beyond just capacities. I don't think it's not that we don't have capacities, but also the criteria that they set for where we can apply itself is so, the whole process is so convoluted. And then also then the money that we have to show as what are our returns, that itself as a criteria is so high that we've tried so many times, even as partners, like, coming together, let's try and get some of these things done, because we know that we have the capacities. But sometimes, it goes beyond capacities, that just the criteria itself is so difficult to crack that we then tend to just give up. Yeah. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of put that in here.
Yeah, I think there was one question for, yeah.
Thank you, Kailash sir, for your questions. And we have been interacting for a long time regarding the West Point. And it was a decision of the government policy decision. And before the construction of the West Point, there was a beautiful workshop organized by Mr. Kailash sir, 7 days workshop, which I myself was present in that workshop for 7 days, continually interacting with the public. And thank you for that opportunity for the workshop where, 7 days of continuous interaction with public and, to understand the need and all was also justified. As per the bylaws, it was, I believe sir said, deregularized up to a point where, as per the government policy. And the ma'am, I saw your name also in the environment committee for that. I saw somewhere, I think, to comply and all. But I saw your name somewhere, so I just got a hint. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have some more questions? Oh, okay. Yes, Professor, please.
Sorry, I just thought I'll add two small little points. As a planner, I have always believed in the idea of regional planning. I think in places like Darjeeling and Sikkim, in the one single basin, I think the concept of regional planning becomes very important. In India, somehow the idea of regional planning is not encouraged. But if you go to countries like, I'm not trying to say that we should follow that, but I'm just giving, because this problem of disasters, the building, regulations and all comes up. Every country, go to Germany, go to Korea, South Korea or France, they have a regional state level land use plan. And within that land use plan, they have designated very clearly which is urbanizable, which is not urbanizable. And it is a legal mandate. You cannot violate that. I am a very strong believer of that idea. We need to refocus our planning ideas, go beyond the cities and plan for a region. I think that will be very, very helpful, especially also in the context of climate change debate. As I said, climate change is not limited to cities, even if you make a resilience plan. It's about the basin. So we need to think like that, then only we can integrate. The second point which I want to highlight is, the problem, it's not only about the hill towns. Hill towns are very special problem. It is also about the financial capacity of the urban areas. You see, these are issues like, why do we depend? Today what is happening is that, most of the project, I think we are centralizing many of the debates, development discourse. So everything like smart city comes from the center, GNA comes from the, so how much does the state have the leverage, right? In terms of financial terms, do the state have the enough resources, or the local body has enough resources, they can think about their own development discourse? I think that is one thing which is missing, and we need to think about that. The planning, recently we have the Finance Commission. I think states like Sikkim need to, highlight these issues, how should the Finance Commission also empower the local bodies financially? I think this is very important. Unless the states like Sikkim and other, and maybe the hill states need to have a certain demand for this type of resource devolution. I think that's important. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Before you go to the next question, just one sentence I would like to add, maybe for the larger interest of the audience. The point which you made on the town planning to look beyond the city boundaries and to take region as a whole, I think that conversation is already there at this central level in our ministry. And because of the announcement of the cities has growth hub concept, so we are not looking at the city confined to the boundary of the municipality. We are looking at the rural-urban interface and going beyond the transition areas. So once that comes up, I think many of the environmental challenges that we are facing today may get resolved to some extent if there is sensitization of the citizens and also stakeholder participation from all concerned agencies.
Yeah, I think we'll just close the questions for the audience on the ground. And I will just request if Ms. Priyadarshinee could just summarize the session and then just give her closing thoughts. And the other questions could be carried forward during the tea that will follow after the panel. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I can make use of my notes.
Yes.
Okay. So, I had written some things down, thought of some things down, and if I'm allowed to kind of borrow from your tagline only, which I think has been very beautifully done, which is about connection, creation, and change. So I was thinking that I'm going to sum up in that manner, but thank you for your consideration. So I was thinking that, this connection is so important, connecting the dots between what is our action and then what is the impact going to be like, so connecting the dots in that sense, a lot of that is already being done. And especially if we look at the community level, they've been connecting dots forever, in terms of they're knowledge keepers of so many different things. And they're also practitioners. And that is where researchers, I think, are now coming in to really validate some of those, understand those in more detail, and also document some of those, So connecting these dots, so kind of borrowing from your tagline is so very important on how we connect these dots, but ultimately then to connect these dots to where it matters, taking it to that space where, the real decision making happens. And that is where I think all of us are struggling. I mean, in the morning session, we heard about ma'am saying researchers go, do their thing, but we never get to hear of it. And then there was again a pushback saying policymakers don't listen to us. So where is then that connection, and how do we connect? That is, I think, where we are all struggling, and which is why it is so fantastic that we are sitting here. Of course, we already had a comment saying that this might not be the right forum because we don't have the right people here. But this is definitely such a good start, to connect that dot from what is happening and then to take it to the next level and to create, creation of that space then becomes so important. How do we create that space where whatever is whatever is there on the ground, what we are doing, what we are finding out, new things, old things which we are documenting, find space, and there is creation of that space, and then ultimately how then that leads to change, because I think Roshan already mentioned that is such a difficult thing. Then I wish it was I wish I could just say that, change, we need a little bit of awareness and a little bit of willingness, but to build that willingness again, because awareness, I think we can do plenty, but how do we bring that willingness, which will actually then drive? It's not like people are not aware, but building that willingness, and there are just so many interplays of how change happens. But I think Sir also was alluding to that point that how do we build then that critical mass of people who are talking more and more about things that matter, because I think for a long time we have really, I don't think we had the space also to talk about and really voice, but then to create that space so that we are able to build that critical mass, amongst ourselves and really kind of shake things up a little bit. So I guess that is where we are right now. So I would just like to, sum up with saying, so connecting, creating spaces for ourselves where we can, make sure that our voices are heard and creating those spaces, and then shaking things up for change. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for it. And I think we have to, as Reading Himalaya also tries to connect, create, and change, and that is something that we are trying to do with this forum. I know it's not a great, people might have their opinions, but at least it's a start. And I think that is what matters, right? And that is what should count. And on that note, I would like to thank all the panelists for being here and giving your views, and also for the audience. And now you have the tea downstairs, and you can follow up with questions that I asked you to stop downstairs with the tea with all the panelists and other members as well. We have exhibitions going as well in the background for a while, and films. But please join us tomorrow morning as well at 9 a.m. And please look at our websites. In the Shared Futures Conclave, you have all the details available. You can see the panels, and then you can be here. Thank you all for being here and engaging. Right here.